Hello! Today I want to go over with you some of the steps to tuning your drums, and we're going to start out with this snare, which I will show you here. And I want to show you the pattern with which you will use to tighten your lugs, and what it will do is keep the tension even across your head. So what you'll do is go on a diametric pattern, so straight across and straight across. You don't want to tune around to start out with because it will unevenly tension the head, and this is not what you want to do. So when you get down to the fine tuning, that is when you can go lug by lug. And this guy, I wanted to start with the bottom, and what you'll do is drop your snares and then take a stick and you'll put it underneath these guys. And what that does is keeps them off the head so that you can clearly hear what you're doing. And I have this resting in my lap, and what that will do is kill any of the sound from the bottom head. And that way we get a truer tone to what we're doing here. And if you want to find the fundamental of your drum, what you will do is hit it in the center open, and that gives you your fundamental tone. Now this guy, I have the bottom head actually tuned to a G3, corresponding on the piano, and I have the top head tuned to a B. And this will give me a nice deep tone on the drum. So, if you're seating a brand new head, putting it on, what you want to do is finger tighten it all the way around first. And then you will take your drum key, and you will do about a quarter turn around in the diametric pattern. And you want it to bring it up just to resonance. And when you get to the point where you're wanting to fine tune, then you would pick a frequency to go by. And I've got this app here. It's called INS Tuner, and this guy's free. And it will generate a tone for you. And so I have this at G3. So that's the tone that I wanted to get for this head here. And what you'll do is fine tune this guy, put your finger here and then go by the lugs, and you want all these to sound in tune with each other. And if you hear one that is lower than another, you're going to bring that guy up a little bit, and you're going to turn very, very small increments because you don't want to over tighten your head. Once you get this guy where you want it, then you can flip it over. It will be in tune with itself on the bottom. And now what we're going to do is go to the top, and then I would adjust this. Now this is my personal preference for tuning. Go up to a B, and that's the tone that I want to look for the top head. That right there. So then I'm going to go around these lugs the same way. You want everybody to sound the same, and there again, if it doesn't, if you find one that's lower, you're going to take your key, small increments up, and when you're down to the fine tuning, then you can just go around lug by lug. Now what I do is take my stick and hit about an inch in from the lug, and I have my finger here to kill a lot of the open overtones, and it gives you a little truer sound. Then, after you got all these guys dialed in evenly, you're going to get a very open tone from your drum. So then you can re-engage your snares, and you get an open tone. Nice. Now, my personal preference is to have it a little bit drier, so what I do is use what's called a dampening ring. And Evans make these, and Remo, and other companies like that. And what it does is it dries it out a little bit. Just right. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about your toms. And this is also an opportunity for me to tell you a little bit about the differences in shell size and wood and hoops, and all of these things are going to affect your sound. This guy here is my much loved Gretsch tom. Now, this is maple, which tends to give you a warm sound, and it has die-cast hoops on it. And what these will do is give you a little more even tuning across your head. They're a little more rigid and they're heavy. So what you're going to get is a little more controlled sound out of these guys. I also have a suspension mount here, which means the shell itself isn't pierced with hardware, which will also give you a more open tone. These guys you're going to tune basically as I showed you with the snare as far as the pattern around goes. Some people recommend tuning your bottom head higher than the top, and what this will do is give you a more controlled sound, and they typically will say to tune it a fourth up. So if I have my top head tuned to an A, then my bottom head is going to be tuned to a D, and that gives you a little more control. Now this, my old Road Warrior here, an old Yamaha, this drum is actually mahogany, and it has a 10% lower fundamental than maple does. And it also has what's called a triple flange tube. These are lighter, and they will give you a little more open tone, and they're more flexible. So these guys don't tend to necessarily hold their tune as well as the die cast, but it does make for a lighter drum also, and it's all in your preference. The depth of this shell is a little bit more than this, even though they're both 12 inches in diameter. This one is 11 inches deep, whereas this one's a 10. So this would be considered a power size tom, and this is a fusion size tom. Tuned the same way, this is typically used for rock applications, and this can go more towards rock or jazz or fusion. But there you have it. I just wanted to explain a little bit about how these things will create a difference in your sound. Also, see, this has a shell mount on it, so that typically will give you a little bit less sustain than the suspension mount. And that's a little bit about your toms. Alright, now we're going to talk briefly about the bass drum. This guy's the heartbeat of your kit, and you're going to have him tuned as low as you can go. Some recommend having it tuned an octave below your floor tom, which is what I've got mine at E1, which is pretty awesome. And this tuner, by the way, you have to have it plugged into an external speaker system to pick up anything below a C4, which is middle C. And right now I've got this on E1. So that's pretty low there. Anyway, that is about where I've got my kick. And the same applies as far as the diametric pattern and how you want to tighten this guy. Some people will press their hand right in the middle of the head, and then you can take your key while you're doing that, and you can loosen it up and watch for the wrinkles. And then when you see a wrinkle, you're just going to tighten it right back up a little bit. And the same thing applies. And I have the other side muted, so it's going to be a little drier tone. And I also ported this guy here and put a port guard on it, and it will keep the head from tearing. It also allows me to mic it, and it dries it up and lowers the pitch just a little bit. So anyway, that's just a brief kind of spot on the bass drum, and I explained a little more in detail in the write-up.